Good evening. This is a meeting of the Transportation Subcommittee regarding Merrill Drive, excuse me. I think we're just going to wait a couple of minutes to see if Council Cirillo, I know she was ill last week, I'm not sure. The clerk thought she was going to be coming, but we'll just give it a minute, one more minute. Is it Merrill Drive?
Is it Merrill's?
What do you need? Paper? Yeah. There you go, right.
Okay, this is the meeting of the Transportation Subcommittee, and the purpose of this meeting is to discuss the expiration of a 60-day trial that the council had adopted. When was that, Natasha? Back, well, 60 days ago.
The 60-day trial expired on February 2nd, so
okay.
It started in December.
So that's the purpose of the subcommittee meeting. So, Mr. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Chairman Elliott.
Here.
Council Cirillo.
Here.
Council Conway.
Here.
3 present.
3 present. So if there are no objections from members of the subcommittee or other members of the City Council, let me recognize City Councilor Rita Mercy, that is in attendance, as well as the Transportation Engineer, Natasha Vance. With that, I think the introduction was self-explanatory. 60-day trial that the council had adopted a couple of months ago has expired. And if you could, Natasha, could you just give us a brief description of exactly what was adopted in that 60-day trial? You've gone to a number of meetings, neighborhood meetings. I know Mr. Gear from the Belvedere Neighborhood Organization is also present. So why don't we just start with what was in place,
Sure.
What the feedback was from residents, and where we go from there.
Okay, yeah, and I thought I'd maybe just give a little history of kind of where this originated from as well. Okay, so the motion originated from a citizen communication with Councilor Cirillo regarding cut-through traffic. That's both cars and commercial vehicles on Merrill Drive, both from Rogers Street up to Fairmont and then from Fairmont down to Rogers. So in July of 2018, a 60-day trial for commercial vehicle restriction was approved by the City Council. if you've been on Merrill Drive, it's a very narrow street. It's only 16 feet wide, and it's very steep, and there's a little twist in it in the middle. So it's really not appropriate, certainly for big box trucks or buses or anything of that size. And it's really not well designed for two-way traffic, because, you know, typically a lane would be a minimum of 10 feet wide. So in this instance, it would only be 8 feet wide. And we looked at a couple different things, like would it be appropriate to make it one way, because the next street that connects Rogers and Fairmont is also one way. That was not something that it seemed like residents were in favor of. So we did the commercial vehicle restriction. It seemed to cut down on it a little bit, but the residents of the street did send me pictures of very clearly commercial vehicles still using the street. And then we had NIMCOG was able to perform a traffic count the first week of October 2018. So they put down the tubes and the automatic counter. It was Monday evening through Thursday morning. And the average daily traffic was about 250 vehicles a day, with about 3% truck and bus traffic. The residents did continue to keep me informed when there's one of the problems is there's frequently kind of property damage because vehicles end up driving, perhaps because it's such a narrow road. Then we did another 60-day trial for a stop sign at the top because people were driving up Merrill Drive and then. Go ahead.
Could you describe property damage?
Oh, sure. It was
lawns, cars?
Yeah, lawns, and so there's like a mulch bed with rocks in the front of it, and
Okay. Not cars, not vehicles.
not cars, not mailboxes, but you know, just lawn damage and needing to be raked and repaired. And so then we did a 60-day trial for a stop sign at the top of Fairmont Street. As I know I've said before, you know, people are supposed to know when you get to a T intersection, even if there isn't a stop sign, you're supposed to stop. But people apparently were just sort of zipping through there, and it was fairly unsafe. So there's a stop sign there now. And then in December, we did the 60-day trial for no-through traffic, was approved by the city council. We posted signs on both ends of Merrill Drive to prevent traffic from cutting through. And then the Lowell Police Department did some sporadic enforcement of the ordinance and issued some warnings to people who were on the road. So that 60-day trial expired February 2nd, as you said. The other thing I want to note is just sort of throughout the city, residents of Lowell are seeing an uptick in sort of abnormal traffic or cut-through traffic on neighborhood streets, which, you know, traffic apps such as Waze, GPS on our phones or in our dashboards are directing traffic off of roads that are designed for big traffic. Like, you know, Roger Street carries 26,000 cars a day. It's under-designed for that amount of traffic, but we certainly don't want hundreds and thousands of cars going off our main roads onto side streets. And in some instances, that your GPS or your Waze will literally be trying to save you 30 seconds or 100 feet, which is not really worth it. And then, so one of the things I did get approval from the legal department to apply to join the Waze City Connected program. What that will enable me to do is to actually designate streets as, almost make them invisible to Waze and anyone who uses Google Maps for their traffic source. And that will also help with all the upcoming construction for the Lord Overpass and the Route 38 project, where we'll be able to indicate to Waze users that this road is closed or it's down to one lane, et cetera. So I think that's a really positive development. I have to put an application in. I'll be doing that this week. They have to approve our application, and then we'll be able to make edits, basically like real time to the Waze app. Okay, so as far as a 60-day trial, typically the way that our 60-day trials work is if we go through the 60-day trial and there aren't any complaints or issues, it goes on the quarterly memo. I know you all know this, I'm just for the public. It goes on the council agenda in the form of a quarterly memo, and then it's referred to a public hearing. People can come speak, but usually no one comes and speaks, and it just gets voted into a permanent traffic ordinance. In this particular instance, I do continue to hear from the residents of Merrill Drive who do appreciate the traffic restriction and they see an improvement. I've also heard from a number of residents of Belvedere who are not pleased with that traffic restriction. I did go to the Belvedere neighborhood meeting, had a number of people say that it was a real issue for them. They used the street. They felt like it was appropriate for them to be able to use it since they live in the neighborhood off the street. And so I was thinking it would be helpful, and I have gotten some emails and online forms, essentially in that same format, and I believe a number of the members of council have gotten that as well. So it wasn't a situation where I felt like I could just put it on the quarterly memo and move on. I thought it was appropriate to hear from members of the community, because there are other options that we can consider. I do think the Ways City Connected will certainly help. I do think commercial vehicles should not be allowed on this street. So, but with that, I'd like to hear, I guess, from the speakers. And I would request if you're a speaker who regularly uses Merrill Drive or has in the past, if you would just indicate when you typically use it, if it's in the morning, at night, or just kind of throughout the day. Thank you.
Okay, so is there a recommendation moving forward on this, or do we want to hear from, well, we can hear from folks first. I'm sorry, this was Councilor Cirillo's motion, so to you.
Thank you. Yes, I would really like to hear from the residents who drive on Merrill Drive, and then we can discuss resolutions. Because this is the third resolution that we're attempting for Merrill Drive. We have made other choices and we have had other 60-day trials to try and alleviate. And I did receive the photos of all the damage of the box truck getting stuck at the top of the street because it was trying to come down, and all the damage to the person's yard, the damage to the person's tree because the truck hit a tree. And so I would really like to hear from the residents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. So at the very least, is there complete agreement that commercial vehicles will not be allowed and signage is up and will remain?
Well, so that signage was removed when the no-through traffic restriction went up, because they would, if no-through traffic, then commercial vehicles would obviously not be allowed. Yeah, I think definitively no commercial vehicles, and I didn't receive any complaints on that 60-day trial. Like, no one had any issues with that. And the residents of Merrill Drive did see a reduction. I will say I don't know that we communicated necessary with LPD to do some sporadic enforcement, and it does seem like with some of these 60-day trials that might be a necessary thing. But yes, I definitely think commercial vehicles should not be on this.
And currently with the expiration, it's a one-way.
It is not one-way, it's two-way.
It's a two-way right
Mhm.
now. Okay, Council Conway, did you have anything, or we all set? Council Mercia? Speakers? Anybody would like to come and speak before the subcommittee? Not yet? Well, first of all, thank you for coming.
My name is Richard Pitkin. I live at Waverly Ave. It's basically in the section of housing across Rogers Street from Merrill. And I use it. I do not use it every day. I'm retired. I don't go out every day. But when I do use it, it's basically because there's so much bloody traffic on Rogers Street. Primarily the queue from the light on Boylston. Sorry, I'm an old guy now. Words escape me. But, and I understand, and I have the residents are right. There should not be commercial vehicles except for deliveries on that street.
Right.
But it'll be difficult when I need to get over to, in particular, the day I use it the most is once a month with the Belvedere Neighborhood Association, because getting over to that meeting and Rogers Street's messed up or full of traffic, and Nesbitt Street's full of traffic, and it just doesn't seem to me that the answer to every problem we have with traffic seems to be to make one-way streets and put more and more traffic onto the main roads. We just don't have enough capacity. And, and I hear people say, well, we should use public transportation, and there's no public transportation. Besides the fact that, as has been discussed with a couple of people, if there's only two households that are going to be able to use Merrill Drive, I'm just wondering whether it should be a city street in a public way, because if only 2 households can use it, you know, why do my taxes not get to be used there, but, you know, there's more traffic on my street? So, you know, I'm sympathetic to the problem, and I don't have a pure solution that works for everybody. And I can see why it's needs to be reduced because of ways and whatever. But, you know, people in the neighborhood need to be able to get around. And I don't know how much you people use Rogers Street, but Rogers Street continues to get worse. And, you know, to some degree, this is a valve for me to be able to get around when Rogers Street's a mess. And I'm just seeing more and more bad behavior on Rogers Street. So, you know, it's not fun doing these things.
Well, I think you raised a valid point, and I'm sure you're aware that the realignment or the DOT project that will include Rogers Street improvement, as well as the intersection of Phoenix and Rogers all the way down to East Merrimack Street, should, I don't want to say alleviate, but it should improve traffic congestion. The caveat being more vehicles are traveling, it seems, in this corridor and others than ever before. So with that, I'm sorry, Councilor Conway had a question.
Yeah, thank you. What you just said was the traffic on Rogers Street it really is unbelievable. You know, I go back just to share a cute little story. And it goes back many years ago when I was probably about 14 years old. My mother and father sat my brother and myself down in the living room and said, "We're going to move." And I said, "Why are we going to move? Kind of like it here." And my mother said, "The traffic is just absolutely terrible." Now, that goes back when I was 14 years. And I said, okay, so we decided to move. The street that I was living on was Rogers Street. And traffic obviously hasn't improved in somewhere around 50 years, I'll tell you that. There certainly is a lot more. The question I have, Natasha, is how many, you said you've got telephone calls, is that correct? Yeah, I mean, were they, what was the ratio? How many wanted the one-way, how many wanted the two-way?
So generally, most people were just saying they were opposed to the through traffic restriction. We weren't really addressing one-way versus two-way, just that they didn't.
What restriction were they talking about?
So in December, the city council approved the no through traffic restriction. So basically, and then when the police started enforcing it, people were getting warnings. You know, people who had typically used Merrill Drive to get home were getting warnings from the police, indicating that they couldn't use that street. And I would note that we do have other streets in the city that have no through traffic restrictions. Merrill Drive is not unique to that. I didn't actually have anyone call or email in support of the new no through traffic, other than the people the residents of Merrill Drive, obviously, who were in support of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else from the audience that would like to come up and say a few words? Yes.
Do I say my name and everything?
Could you give us your name and address, please?
Jennifer Ty, 17 Hoyt Ave. Sorry I'm late. I apologize. I am very upset that it is not a through street because I live within a quarter of a mile of that street. I drive my child to and from school every day using that street. I never got a notice in the mail saying this was a trial, not a through street. Also, the way the sign is, until you've committed to the turn, it's on the same thing as the post. It's on the same, you know, the street sign goes this way, not a through street goes this way. Until you're committed, you don't see that. If you've been driving that way for 15 years, you don't even notice. Or I didn't. But also, there's a couple other things that bothered me a little bit about it. If you complain and complain during traffic time, are you going to make every street for people who complain not through? My street is a cut through during traffic times. I have young children out front. I'm not saying it's easy, but I also think there are other towns, cities, where a street's small like that. If you live in the neighborhood, you know to take your time up and down the street. Other towns and cities will say local traffic only. Then you don't have big trucks going up and down. Hopefully you have people who are living in the vicinity who use that street, because with that closed, there's another one-way. All of Rogers Street has no access until the Boylston Street intersection. And also, I'm not sure who, there's a person on the street that when it became a no street would stand in the middle of the street and tell you, hey, you can't go here, which is a little intimidating and I think not right. My experience. I don't know if it's officially done or whatever. I just wanted to say that, you know, I don't use the buses for my child, which is my decision. However, it's an everyday to and from school most direct route for me. I don't drive 100. I go very slow, knowing if someone's coming or not. I'm aware. I think most people who live in the area are aware to take their time on that street. That's all. Thank you.
Just so you know, so it's, we've had a couple of trials, and the latest trial expired this past Saturday, so that's why we're having this
Okay.
hearing again to continue the conversation.
Okay.
Could I respond to a couple of the points she made?
Natasha.
To the local traffic only, it is a great idea. We just don't have an ordinance that supports that. And
Is that something that, I mean, I personally think it's a good idea. I guess the question is, how do you enforce it, or is it by?
So I think the way that's enforceable, well, it would be very difficult for the police to know who's local or who's not, but that's also true, I guess, of, like, I don't know how they would know who necessarily lives on the street or doesn't. And I know that the residents of the street have mentioned to me that they don't really have any issue with people who live close by using the street. The issue they have is with people from New Hampshire using the street, or, and in that instance, that is definitely Waze or a GPS app. I can certainly look into whether that's an ordinance we could add to our traffic ordinances, just local traffic only. I don't know how that's enforceable, but that, other than people being good people, but that's certainly an option. And
Yeah, I think that, again, I understand it's enforcement, but if you let,
Yeah.
people that don't live here, that it's really primarily, it's a
No,
neighborhood.
I
and
think
it's
it's
a neighborhood, it's not a cut-through, it shouldn't be used as a cut-through.
for sure. Yeah,
I think that makes some sense.
agreed. I just wanted to mention that's the reason we, and I don't know if that's like an MUTCD compliant sign necessarily, like if it's a standard, but typically if we just match the visibility and the colors, it's acceptable. So that is something I could certainly look into,
I think
and
it's
a good
more
idea,
the
I think.
angle. I think where the sign is, it's more the angle, because if you're on Rogers Street taking a right, if you're taking a right, you definitely can't see it. If you're taking a left, you don't see it until you've already committed.
You're already on the street.
So I think that's dangerous as well.
All right, well, and we can certainly look at the alignment of the
Yeah.
sign.
Yeah, true, in the dark, because
Okay.
that's not any streetlights right there. In the dark, not at all.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm using it for school, so daylight. No, it's fair enough.
Okay, did you have, did
Oh, okay.
your questions all answered? Okay, all set. Anybody else would like to speak? Mr. Conway, did you have any other questions? Oh, Mr. Gear? We know if we wait long enough, someone will get
Good
up.
evening. Thanks for having a meeting tonight. My name's John Gear. I live on Alcott Street in Lowell, and I'm also president of the Belvedere Neighborhood Association. I can see both sides of this issue. If I lived on that street and had damage to my property, particularly from commercial vehicles or whatever, I'd like that not to happen. I actually used the street today legally, I guess, because the trial period ended on Saturday. Very narrow street. I think I'd take my life in my hands if I was coming down that street to Rogers Street on an icy conditions. Probably slide right into Rogers Street. So it's pretty challenging area. My suggestion is no commercial vehicles and enforce that. I'm not sure how well that's enforced in the city, but that's an option. You could put up a sign, local traffic only. I don't know how you'd enforce it. I don't know if the city's going to put something up that they can't enforce, but encouraging local traffic only seems to be the way to go. I do respect people's use of the public street, so I guess I would be opposed to having it not allowing public access, but restricting it in some way. And I do like the idea, Natasha, of taking that street and others off the Waze, Google Map systems so that those aren't seen as cut-throughs. That's a dangerous cut-through. I don't know how many people would want to take that street often unless you have a purpose driving your kids to school or whatever. So that's what I have to offer, and thanks again for the meeting tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Gear. Council Conway.
Just a couple quick questions. Natasha, how difficult it is to take it off Google? How does that work now?
So I won't be able to do it immediately. We have to apply to the Waze City Connected program, which I can do. I got the okay from. So basically, the way Waze City Connected works is we have to provide some data to them. Waze isn't doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They're wanting traffic information and road closure information from us. And so I had to get approval from the law department to make sure that was okay for the city to share data. So now we would then go through a process of, we submit an online application, however long it takes them to respond back and say, yes, we want you in our network. And then as far as actually removing the street from it, it's a very quick and neat, 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the commercial vehicles, I mean, I think a lot of people are certainly concerned about that. I think it's, again, I just lived right up the street from it. That's bizarre to have commercial vehicles on
Agreed.
the street because it is a narrow, it's very narrow.
Yeah.
How do we ensure, I mean, are we going to have police officers there on a regular basis, certainly to get,
Yeah, I was hoping one of the LPD officers who was out there would be able to come tonight. I did invite him, but I think they typically get off work at 3, so we're perhaps not able to come. And his feeling was that they could do some enforcement. Basically what happens is people have to learn they can't use the street by getting tickets.
Well, they must have, obviously, you've done the studies that the traffic area and I see them going up at, 3:30, 4:30 in that vicinity, heading up and cutting through. So, I mean, that might be the time that the police would go?
Yeah, I would think that,
Monitor
well, for commercial vehicles, that could be almost any time of day.
True, yeah.
So I would probably leave that to their discretion. Because I think generally speaking, if a police officer was stationed either maybe on Fairmont, they could catch somebody coming up but I think it seems, just anecdotally, it seems like it's when people are coming down from Fairmont, like they're following GPS and they're saving 100 feet by not going to the light at Fairmont.
Yeah, I mean, I happen to think it's bizarre going down that street.
Agreed.
Even in good weather, I wouldn't want to get down there.
When the
And there's no lights.
Right. And when the motion came before the council, a number of people mentioned, even the city manager mentioned that, and she obviously knows that that's not the fastest way, but Waze will often tell her to take Merrill Drive even when she's going somewhere where it doesn't make sense. So.
Years ago, that used to be gravel there, too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was a gravel street, which really made things a lot more fun.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It was bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, I would, go ahead, sorry.
No, that's all right, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's definitely clear that Merrill Drive is not a street designed for a lot of traffic. It's very narrow, and as I guess a couple of people mentioned, if you're coming down it, you should be driving slowly and carefully. And I'm not sure what you would do if you encounter another vehicle as you're coming down that's coming up. I guess you would pull into someone's driveway. I'm not really sure, but it's just very narrow.
Council Cirillo.
Hi, yes. Well, I'm hearing that the no commercial vehicles was kind of something that we all agreed to, that no commercial vehicles is possibly the way to go for Merrill Drive, because I'm if I remember correctly, it was the commercial vehicles, the box trucks, the buses that were, they couldn't make that turn, and they were really messing up our residents' front lawns and hitting the trees. And so I would like to propose a motion for putting forth another 60-day trial.
Since we've already done the 60-day trial, I could actually just put that on the quarterly memo, and it could be voted as a traffic ordinance.
As a traffic ordinance?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we wouldn't have to
I
do
would
another
like-
60 days. Yeah.
Okay, so I would like to propose a motion for to have no commercial vehicles signs on Merrill Drive,
Yeah,
on both ends of Merrill Drive.
okay.
And so that's my motion.
Motion by Council Cirillo to require no commercial vehicle signs on both ends of Merrill Drive, seconded by Council Conway. Mr. Clerk, could you call the roll? Roll call. Yes.
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 And
Council Cirillo?
I would also like to propose a motion to have the city manager in the correct department look into the local traffic only ordinance for the city of Lowell, so that maybe we can start getting something together for a local traffic only ordinance and signage for these streets, the streets similar to Merrill Drive or even Merrill Drive. So,
Motion by Council Cirillo to request city manager and law department prepare a report on process to create local traffic ordinance and signs throughout the city of Lowell, seconded by Council Conway. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the opposed, motion carries. Okay, where are we at now, Ms. Vance, with traffic flow?
I think that I think that's a good. I think both of those are great motions, and I think it's a good interim solution. I will get cracking on the local traffic restriction as quickly as I can, because I think that that would again help the situation.
So we don't want vehicles going down or exiting on Rogers, is that? I shouldn't say
I
we.
think if it were, I don't know that a one-way restriction is a great idea, but it would, because it's such a narrow street, and there is another adjacent street that is one way in the down direction. So if I were going to recommend it be one way, it would be one way in the up direction.
So, forgive me, can you just run through real briefly, we've done 2 trials or 3?
3.
Can you go just real briefly, just
No
so
problem.
I can process this? The first one was,
Commercial vehicle restriction.
that's all.
That was, yeah.
Second one?
The second one was the stop sign at the top off of Fairmont.
That's all.
Yeah, and
So vehicles within the 120 days were allowed to go both ways.
correct.
Okay, third one,
That was the no-through restriction in December.
no
And that-
through going,
In
which
both
way?
in both directions. So
in
it was
both-
posted at both ends of Merrill Drive, yeah. And the first 2 60-day trials, I got absolutely no comments. Everybody was fine with that. And
Right.
I think there's obviously wide consensus that commercial vehicles don't belong on Merrill Drive,
Yep.
and people
it.
should stop at the top of Fairmont. I mean, at the top of Merrill to turn onto Fairmont. The issue is that a number of people in the neighborhood but want and need to be able to use Merrill Drive. And there are some concerns with all of the upcoming construction projects. I think that might end up creating more cut-through traffic on Merrill, which is why I think I urgently need to get access to Waze and be able to shut that down. But the local traffic only certainly could help with that. If I need to probably talk to the police department and figure out how they would go about enforcing that. I don't know the answer to that as I sit here tonight, but I think it's definitely an option.
So there's any further action that we need to take care of this evening?
I don't think so.
Council Mercy, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there a need for a public hearing for this still?
So when the 60-day trial for commercial vehicles has already completed, and I can just put that on the quarterly memo, there will be a public hearing for the quarterly memo and the stop. So if anybody wants to speak to that, they can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't have any idea when that would be?
I just need to compile the quarterly memo, so I would guess, if not, probably 2 city council meetings from now,
Okay, thank
maybe,
you.
maybe 3, depending.
We have another speaker.
Good evening, thank you. Brian Monahan, 239 Fairmount Street. I appreciate all the work the city has done on this. The origins, obviously, were that neighbors complained that there was damage to property, and the city responded. Ms. Vance has done an awful lot of work on it, and the council has listened to us several times. My concern is there are a few solutions here that we've discussed today. I think those are good ideas. My concern is that when the traffic starts to increase as a result of the construction, and I think there's going to be detours that the city might create, which we have to understand that's progress, and we have to accept that. But I think also people are going to take things into their own hands with trucks driving up and down the streets. So prohibiting commercial traffic up and down would really be a big factor. It's a very tight turn. Legitimately, it is dark. You can't see the signs too well. And apparently the city is aware of that and working on it. So, but thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Monahan.
I will get in touch with the sign department tomorrow and, oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I was just going to say I'll get in touch with the sign department tomorrow and ask them to make sure that if they, when a sign goes up, that it's very clearly visible before someone turns onto the street.
Yeah, I think that'll make some sense for sure.
Hey, my name is Steve Maniscalco. I live on the corner of Fairmont and Merrill. When I first called the city about the vehicles running into my front steps, my driveway, my shed, making turns, ruining my front lawn, that's how this all started about a year ago. I think the traffic has gotten better. And just so everybody understands, I'm not the mayor of Merrill Drive. I'm not opposed to people using Merrill Drive in either direction. What we first started was, I was counting in upwards of 200 cars an hour coming up from Rogers Street on Merrill Drive. And then about 50 cars coming down Merrill or waiting or pulling into my driveway to let cars go by. And I'd had enough. I mean, let's just try to come up with a solution and not a Band-Aid. That's where I was at. And again, I don't have any problem with people using the road at all, especially the residents, the local residents, Belvedere residents, or whatever. And if an announcement could be made, I mean, that's wonderful. But we went from almost an upwards of 2,500 cars a week coming up Merrill down to about 1,000 now. And there are signs at the end of the road. And as one gentleman pointed out to me, I've been using this road for 5 years, and I don't care what sign they put in Merrill Drive, I'll still use the road. And that's his problem, not mine. So I'm appreciative of what everybody's done, how far we've gotten with this, and the traffic has subsided quite a bit. There haven't really been any commercial vehicles using it other than UPS, FedEx, and every once in a while the school bus, a transportation bus. Brian and both, we live right there in Charlie. Nobody stops at the stop sign. And if anything, they're doing 40 to 50 miles an hour coming up Merrill, speeding to the top, and not everybody, but most cars. And they're just turning on right to go back down to Rogers to beat the light to go across Shed Park. Mm-hmm. And it's just become, it's bothered me to the point where I'm about to put my property up for sale, because it's been going on for over a year, and it's hard for me and my family. I don't even let my grandkids out in the yards. I mean, even shoveling my front lawn, my front walkway, I have to be careful. The street's only 9 feet wide where I'm at. So, I appreciate what everybody's doing. I'm not opposed to people using Merrill Drive at all. That doesn't bother me. It's the unnecessary traffic, the cut-through traffic, and just the disrespect of speeding up there. And a lot of landscaping trucks or a lot of pickup trucks will come up to the top of that, and they'll fly, and they don't even stop. So that's all.
I don't blame you. I think it's clearly a safety issue, and people aren't, respecting your property. It's time for us to take action, which we have. I like this local option. The more I think about it, perhaps it is, maybe it can be enforced, and I know it'll be difficult, but if you see a vehicle going on Merrill and then going to dump off Rogers, that's not local traffic. Mm-hmm. So, and I know it'll be somewhat self-enforcing, but please keep in touch with us when it comes to enforcement and stop signs. Until you start writing some tickets, people will continue to do it, unfortunately. So.
It's been a long process, and Scott's been up there, Patrolman Scott's been up there, he's been good, and Jen Rowe and a couple of the others. And,
Sir, Steve, could you come to the mic here?
They're basically just
You're on
saying,
TV.
slow down. You know, if you're coming up Merrill, fine. He
Right.
said, I'm not opposed to you using it. It's a public road, but stop at the stop sign.
Right.
You know, give it 3 seconds and take a look at what's going on, you know?
Agreed.
And that's what he's been good about doing that. So it has slowed down quite a bit.
Good. Council Mercia,
No.
all set? Anything else?
And maybe a speed limit sign, maybe we need to consider posting something about a reduce, I mean, to me, a safe speed on that road is like 10 miles an hour.
Right.
I mean, I can certainly look at, according to AASHTO, at that grade and that narrowness, what would be appropriate. So that may be another option to try to slow people down or to give the police something to enforce as well.
But do you recommend 10 miles an hour, 20?
I would just want to look at AASHTO and see what would be appropriate based on the grade of the road and the width of it. But it would be low.
I mean, I think that's a good idea that we have some type of a speed limit on it. And under normal circumstances, with your experience, is it usually at 10 miles an hour on a situation
Yeah, I
like
mean,
this?
Merrill Drive is a fairly unique road. Like it's very small, very narrow, and very steep. I'm not, you know, I don't know off the top of my head, but the AASHTO, which is the American Association of State Highway Transportation Organization, they establish all the guidelines for all local and all roads up to interstate highways down to local roads. So they will have some guidelines and will follow what's appropriate. But I would guess 10, 15 miles an hour.
Right. And just one other quick question. Do you work hand in hand now with the police department?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now, as far as the giving the tickets out, are they to the point where it's just warnings that they're giving?
It's my understanding that they were just giving out warnings. I don't know.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I've complained about other streets, you know, Andover Street. It's like a highway there.
Sure.
And they say that they have. You know, they give warnings. Well, I'm sorry, but a ticket I think is a little bit stronger than a warning, and that resonates. And it resonates a lot quicker.
Sure.
Around the area that, you know, you're going to get a ticket if you do the speed.
Yeah, I think with the no through traffic restriction, because I think they were aware that people lived in the neighborhood, I don't think they wanted to ticket a lot of people who were just learning a new traffic pattern.
Right.
I agree with you on Andover Street that people should be getting tickets.
Well, I mean, they did that on the connector too, because there was a lot of problems. There were deaths there, and they ended up, and it wasn't just warnings, it was actually tickets. And it certainly did change, because you see people when they hit a certain area, its car goes from 65 or 70 miles an hour down to like 40 miles an hour. They're like Pavlov's dog. And I think that something like this here, you've got to be, you know, if they know they're going to get a ticket, then I think they're going to obviously think twice, to be honest with you.
I would agree.
You know, thank you.
So Councilor Conway, let me get this straight. You moved from Roger Street because there was too much traffic to Andover Street.
Figure that out.
That was my wife's fault. She lived on Andover Street.
His poor wife, always his wife. Councilor, then Councilor.
Well, then I would like to put forth another motion to look into signage and the speed limit that's appropriate for Merrill Drive. And if we can start that process and also get some speed limit signs on Merrill Drive. Thank you.
Motion by Councilor Cirillo to request traffic engineer study appropriate speed limit, make a recommendation for Merrill Drive. Seconded by Councilor Conway. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Councilor Mercia.
Not that I want to see a lot of signs on the street, but if we had a sign that says strictly enforced, that would be something too. Local traffic only, strictly enforced, something like that.
Well,
I can't
Councilor
say they
Mercia,
weren't
if there's no
warned.
objection from Councilor Cirillo, we'll just include speed limit and then strictly enforced.
No objection.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, so noted. Okay, thank you very much. There's another meeting coming in. I think we've wrapped up. Any other last comments that we'd like to make? Thank you very much for attending. We will bring this report into the City Council meeting tomorrow evening for report and recommendation and action on 3 motions. Motion by Councilor Cirillo to adjourn, second by Councilor Conway. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. This meeting stands adjourned.